On today's World Insight, inside the Taliban process of forming an open, inclusive government in Afghanistan, the key players who will likely lead. The answers exclusively direct from the spokesman of the Taliban political office in Qatar.
We are Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan for the last 20 years.
And a spike in internal Afghan refugees with dwindling aid, a looming humanitarian disaster. The head of the UN Humanitarian Office in Afghanistan gets us up to speed.
But the more recent arrival in Kabul are really linked to the conflict.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. The Taliban is still in talks for a new and inclusive Islamic government as it promised, days after its forces entered the Afghan capital Kabul. After a hasty U.S. exit and a chaotic exit from Afghanistan, the resigned Afghan President Ashraf Ghani fled to the country nearby. Former Afghan First Vice President Amarella Saleh is rallying forces in Panjshir Valley, northeast of Kabul, to resist Taliban. But the Taliban did promise nationwide amnesty and security, yet the international community is worried about how women's rights will be protected. What the Taliban have in mind in terms of its plan of Afghanistan? Will we see an open and inclusive government as promised? My exclusive interview with Suhail Shaheen, the Taliban spokesperson in Qatar. Take a listen. I'm joined by Suhail Shaheen, Taliban political office spokesman in Qatar. Mr. Shaheen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. We are Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. For the last 20 years, we were fighting the occupation in our country under the name of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. But of course, our deliberations are continuing. It is underway. A delegation headed by Mullah Biradar, he landed in Kandahar province for that purpose, in order to form an Afghan inclusive Islamic government after consultation with the top leadership of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So this will be done soon.
Earlier, we've been hearing the news from another spokesperson of the Taliban suggesting there's going to be the supreme leader, there's going to be something like a ruling council, and there's also going to be a government headed by some top officials of the Taliban. How should we connect the two sides of the stories together? Can you give us more information?
One is the structure that right now we have that you are referring to. And the other is an Afghan inclusive government that we want to include some of the personalities, Afghan personalities, Afghan politicians in that government. For that, there is consultation going on. So I think both can go together because a new government set up, which is going on consultation for that, it will be announced soon. But the other which you refer to, we have right now, we have a top leader, and then we have a leadership council. So this is setup is active right now.
The Leadership Council is made up of how many people? We know some of the names, for example, Mr. Yaqub, Mr. Haqqani, Mr. Baradar, who is now already in Afghanistan. Who are the other people's identity and what are their roles, briefly?
Some of them famous you mentioned already, but many of the Leadership Council members, they are also members of the negotiation team, and they are here based in Doha for the negotiation. So you can say about 60% to 65% of the membership members of the negotiation team. They are also members of the Leadership Council.
I see. What does that mean? Another government declared by the Taliban of Afghanistan. Who are we going to expect going to play a leading role in that? Is it going to be Mr. Baradar, which the press seem to emphasize and mention a lot, or there are other candidates?
So for that, the deliberation is for that purpose, in order to form a government in which other Afghan politicians, personality, should also have participation in that. That is the talks or consultation is continuing for that purpose.
What kind of participation? Can you help us to describe the format of so-called cooperation and process, consultation?
So maybe some of the personalities in some politician, Afghan politician, who are not members of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, they can be including to be members of cabinet members or in other high portfolio.
You promised, Taliban, to have an inclusive government. Would that mean all factions, all ethnicities, all genders, and also all religion? What kinds of inclusiveness is exactly the description?
Negotiation which is continuing, it is considering all Afghans. All Afghans are considered, but then they will select some personalities which is suitable to be included in the future government. So that is the general framework. So when they are selected, they will be announced to all.
What kinds of selection process will that be? Will people vote?
Right now, it is a vacuum of power. There is no time for any kind of election. There is no constitution. A new constitution will be drafted and then approved. So this needs a lot of work, but that work will be done later. But right now, there is a need to have an Afghan inclusive government. So of course, through talks with these personalities and politicians and deliberation among our top leadership and among ourselves, those persons will be selected.
You mean those names would include, for example, being consulted, Mr. Karzai, the former president, and Mr. Abdullah, the former foreign minister of the Republic of Afghanistan?
As I said, I can't say by name, but there is a general law which I already explained to you is that anyone can be considered.
Sir, I also want to know, and many have this issue as well around the world, whether what you're saying right now are total PR stunt, only for public relations, whether you are really going to implement what you promises.
So we have this record. What we say, we do that.
Is there a time frame to implement that? A time frame?
No, we have not set a time frame that if you do not do it in one day, otherwise we will do something else.
Tell me more about how you are keeping Kabul and the surrounding areas in peace, because we understand the latest news reports suggest even though you declared the IEA, Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, the former Vice President of the Republic of Afghanistan have declared, according to the Constitution of the Republic of Afghanistan, that he is the president. And there's also rebel fighting in the Panjshir Valley, northeast of Kabul. So tell me more about what exactly the situation.
The situation, normalcy has restored to the Kabul city. There is security, and it is improving hour by hour. The people of Afghanistan rose against the occupation, and and they succeeded, and all our provinces of Afghanistan in the capital city of Kabul. They are all in our hands, and our people, they have at the ministries running daily affairs. Those who were imposed as a result of the occupation on our people, and they have no place in Afghanistan. They were rejected by the people of Afghanistan. How they claim they are the president or vice president, while the constitution they are speaking of, it was a constitution drafted under the shadow of occupation, under the aircrafts and bombs of occupiers.
Mr. Shaheen, so you are saying that the fighting in Panjshir Valley will continue. We understand anti-Taliban forces are, according to some media report, gathering toward that area. What is the latest situation as the spokesperson of the Taliban, you know?
If they are, I have also seen reports that they are gathering in Panjshir in other areas, but I believe they will be soon root out from there. And I know some intelligence, foreign intelligence, will be helping them. But the people of Afghanistan, and they fought against the occupation, they will also fight against them. So they have no place in the society of Afghanistan. It is better for them.
How are you in contact with various countries at this moment? For example, the United States, Russia, China, Iran, Pakistan, India, and the list goes on. What are you doing in terms of reaching out to the others?
Yes, some of the countries you mentioned, we have been in touch with them for many years here at the political office. We have regular meeting with them. We have been exchanging views over the situation of Afghanistan. They were helping us and in the process of peace and reconciliation. So that contacts are still continuing.
We understand the latest news suggests that $10 billion of assets of the former Republic of Afghanistan government now is being freezed by the United States. In other words, these money are not going to be shared to you, the Taliban. What do you make of that latest news?
So the asset is for the property of the people of Afghanistan. And when the chapter of occupation is closed and another phase of independence, freedom, and reconstruction and rehabilitation of Afghanistan is beginning, so there is of course need for budget in order to carry out and these projects, to complete these projects. So it is very much necessary. Not only those, this budget should be given to Afghanistan, but also I think there is need for international donors conference that they promise help with the people of Afghanistan, with Afghanistan for the next years to help them reconstruct Afghanistan, because we have war for the last 4 decades, and there is a lot of destructions. So we need to rebuild our country and to create opportunity of employment for our people. And so for that, there is so much need for assistance, other countries' assistance, and also for our own budget to be released to be spent for the benefit of our people.
But you know, Mr. Shaheen, for that to happen, there are a lot of questions, though, in the international community about the credibility, first of all, of Taliban, and then the future of Afghanistan. You promised about the amnesty and also the protection of women. You also promised the international community of a transition of power. But, you know, people are worried whether that is true or not, particularly whether Afghanistan will harbor still terrorists or terrorists using Afghanistan as a jumping start to harm the other parts of the region and beyond, Mr. Shaheen.
About, they say that Afghanistan will be a jumping place spot for others. It is not the reality. We are committed not to allow anyone to use the soil of Afghanistan against any other country. If they have concern, they can show us. There are such people in this place of Afghanistan. We will take action. If they are not able to show us a place where are those people or that we are harboring, they are only expressing concern without any evidence, proof. So it means they are not talking about the realities. They are only talking about the fears, the worries, the concern they have in their inner selves.
Okay.
Not on ground.
Understand. Several points to follow up on that. You talk about the anti-terrorists or any organization using Afghanistan as a jumpstart for harming other countries. ETIM is a terrorist organization, for example. Does the Taliban against ETIM, and will you make sure that they will not use Afghanistan as a jumping pad toward other countries and other places in the region?
I have already told you, on the basis of the Doha Agreement, we are committed not to allow anyone to use the soil of Afghanistan against neighboring countries in other countries of the world, whether it is a group or an individual. So I think that includes all. So all countries should be assured about that. They should have confidence in our statements, and that we are practically showing.
Let me ask you, what about how women will function in societies? You earlier also told reporters that the Afghanistan in the future under Taliban will be by Sharia law. But how should we understand the scale of freedom that women could enjoy and should enjoy during that period of time?
They are already enjoying. When journalists are working, they can report. The journalists are returning, they can criticize. Even our officials, the teachers are working, the doctors are working, the students are studying, the schools are open, the universities are open. So all of them are practically in areas under our control. They are doing this. So it is not only limited to journalists. So these are the ground realities. So should not have any worry about that. Yeah.
I understand what you're just saying, but what about their wardrobe? Do they have the freedom to choose whatever they want to wear? And also, will women be able to function in their society besides just working, besides just going back home? What about in the society?
Yes, of course. So, when they go to job, they go to market. So that is they are going and they are participating in the society. And there is not one specific type of hijab. There is a different type of hijab. So this is up to them. Based on their work, they can choose.
May I ask you a question in another direction, but very important? How do you and your colleagues see the 20 years of occupation of the United States in Afghanistan?
Occupation is occupation. It is lack of freedom. It is that many things are imposed on the people. You do not have independent economic policy, political policy. and social policy, so and so. So, but in independence, you are the owner. You take up decision and implement them, and you take decision bearing in mind the interest of your country and of your people. So there is a lot of difference between being under occupation and being a free people in a free country.
Sir, the Chinese embassy, as promised, remain open at this moment in Kabul. Will lives be protected? The foreigners that are working and living in Kabul and other areas of Afghanistan.
You may have seen our official statement in this regard, not once, but several times, and saying that there is no risk to embassies, diplomats from our side, but rather we provide secure environment for all embassies, all diplomats to function normally, and there will be no danger to their life, and even they will be protected better than they were being protected in the past. That is our commitment in policy, and we are practically showing that. I think China is a great neighboring country. That's, I think, a very rational decision that they remain in their embassy remain in Kabul. They're not evacuating. So I think I applaud and commend this decision in a very rational decision.
We understand earlier, as you may know very well, Chinese State Councilor Foreign Minister Wang Yi received a delegation of Taliban leaders. In fact, some of your colleagues were there in Tianjin. How do you describe that encounter and interaction? And what role do you see China could be playing in terms of reconstruction and also keeping the peace in Afghanistan?
Of course, we have had many different visits to China, and they were playing their role in peace and reconciliation of Afghanistan. Now, when we are there in Kabul, and they can a very important role in reconstruction of Afghanistan, and also in peace and reconciliation, their role was very constructive, and they had appointed special envoys for Afghanistan, with whom we had regular contacts, and they have appointed a new special envoy for Afghanistan. We have contacts with him. And recently, our delegation had a meeting with him. So they are, and they were contributing positively to peace and reconciliation. And we hope they also contribute to reconstruction of Afghanistan.
I was recently talking to the United Nations official working on the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. And they told me a lot of concerning numbers regarding the children, malnutrition, and many other issues. How do you make sure, as the Taliban now is the strongest force in Afghanistan, that there is not going to be a devastating humanitarian crisis as time goes by?
Yes, that is why we are calling all countries that they come forward and help the people of Afghanistan, because we have just came out or coming out from one period of war and destruction and entering a new phase. In that phase, I think the people of Afghanistan need help of other countries. They should come forward and help us in the health sector and also infrastructure and education sector and other various sectors when they can come to explore our resources, natural resources. This is our general invitation to all countries. So, we appreciate any country that they help us at this crucial time of our history.
Suhail Shaheen, Taliban political office spokesperson based in Qatar right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're watching World Insight. Coming up, a spike in internal Afghan refugees with dwindling aid, a looming humanitarian disaster. The head of the UN Humanitarian Office in Afghanistan talks to me after this break. Welcome back. I'm Tian Wei, and this is World Insight. Afghan civilians with little choice but to bear the brunt of a chaotic country where humanitarian aid remains crucial. People from different provinces have flooded into Kabul. Internal refugees spiked to around 550,000 since the beginning of this year. As roughly half of all Afghans, or some 18 million people, depend on humanitarian aid, it is essential that basic services go uninterrupted. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the UN Security Council. He also appealed for the Council to stand as one in ensuring human rights are protected, humanitarian aid continues, and that Afghanistan is not a haven for terror groups. On the front line from Afghanistan, Isabel Moussard-Carlson, the head of the UN Humanitarian Office in Afghanistan, talks to me. I want you to help us a little bit about the latest situation on the ground in Kabul. As the head of the UN Coordination Office for Humanitarian Affairs on the ground in Afghanistan, what is the latest?
So today in Afghanistan, we are looking at many people arriving in Kabul from other large cities, seeking for safety, moving away from the conflict, and also all the other difficulties these population are facing. And I'm thinking especially of the drought. But the more recent arrival in Kabul are really linked to the conflict.
Where are they usually coming from? Do we know? And do we know approximate numbers right now in Kabul?
They're coming from the different provinces, mostly Logar and Kunar provinces. And in terms of the numbers, what we have seen in terms of internally displacement for the last couple of weeks and months now is about 550,000 internally displaced since the beginning of the year. And we see a very strong increase in those numbers in the last couple of months, especially since May, with 80,000 people being displaced on a monthly basis.
And now probably much more, as it's very hard to count at this moment, right?
We see a lot of population movement, and it's indeed quite difficult. But the teams on the ground are trying to continue assessing the needs of all these people and to provide emergency response to make sure that they're not left without any humanitarian aid.
So how are you helping really?
Yeah, so the programs, the emergency programs are about providing emergency food. We're also looking at ensuring that they have access to potable water, to all the other essential services such as medical care. But we're also looking at education programs that are still ongoing and have not been stopped during these difficult weeks.
So how are you working with the Taliban and some of the other forces that are active in the capital, Kabul? Could you give us some example of how you're interacting with one another?
Well, as humanitarian actors and as the humanitarian community, it is in our mandate to talk and negotiate with all parties in presence. Our key role in OCHA is to negotiate access to ensure that all the humanitarian actors can provide the necessary humanitarian response to the people in need, and also to ensure that the people in need have access to the essential services. So this is the conversations we're having with all parties in presence.
What does that mean? For example, Taliban already in control of most of the country, as they claim, and also the city of Kabul. How are you working with them? What about the airport? As we know, there's a lot of chaos and confusion. Would they be operational in terms of providing support to deliver the necessary equipment and necessities?
We have been negotiating access with the different parties in presence for a long time. So this is our normal way of working as humanitarians. And therefore, when we negotiate access, we also negotiate for some programs to be taking place to ensure that the vulnerable people have also the necessary aid. So this is how we're working. We are ensuring that all parties in presence will let us work, let us have access to the people in need, and will also respect the needs assessments that we're doing. So when the needs assessment are done, we're customizing the response to the people and to their reality, and we're ensuring that all parties in presence understand that and accept that.
Could you describe one or two examples of how you and your colleagues are doing your work?
When we're doing the needs assessment, we have teams from different operational sectors, for example, from water and sanitation, from food security, which will be looking at the food aspects of it, for health. And these teams are getting together, and they're going to address the different population and see what are their needs, what are their priorities, and we're talking to them first. And usually the people we're meeting will tell us our key priority is health, or our key priority is access to potable water because we don't have access to water, or the first thing we need is food because we haven't been eating for the time we were traveling all the way to Kabul, so we're very in need of having urgent access to food. We also look at health, especially if there is very young children. We know today in Afghanistan that 50% of the children under 5 are suffering of acute severe malnutrition, which is a deadly disease. And so these are the things that we will be looking at. And these teams, when they arrived in those sites with the displaced population, these are the questions they will be asking. What are your priority needs? Once that is assessed and we have a good idea of who are the people and what their needs are, then other teams are getting ready to do the response. And we will really customize the response to the needs. That's how humanitarian work is being done.
We understand the UN Security Council recently had an urgent meeting on the issue of Afghanistan. There are certain statements coming out. How much will that provide some kinds of policy and morale support in a way to you and your office in Kabul?
It is very well received that the Security Council and all the leadership in the UN are very concerned by the situation in Afghanistan and are very concerned by the ability of the humanitarian community to stay and deliver and to ensure the protection of the most vulnerable people of Afghanistan. So it is very important that the world is aware and understand what kind of humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Afghanistan.
You think about that, nobody expected, I would assume, including your team, that things would change so much just over the past 1 week. So how were you, accepting the news, the information that are coming in all the time, and try to adjust your plan in a different way?
We can say that we have been anticipating, and the humanitarian plan for Afghanistan was anticipating a worsening of the situation from the drought, and also was anticipating more displacement as we could see the conflict was increasing. So the plan that was made for 2021 had already integrated a number of these aspects. And yes, adaptability is one of the most important skill we have in this work. And so I am actually really proud of the team I'm working with, because they've been incredibly adaptable and able to readjust to the new circumstances.
I know you are a very experienced person in terms of handling humanitarian crisis, but when you think about the country of Afghanistan, where you are, over the past 20 years and beyond, there's one after another humanitarian crisis taking place. So sitting in your chair right now, Isabel, how do you see the nature of your work compared to the other parts of the world? What are you trying to adjust that uniquely compared to your other assignments?
Afghanistan has always been quite a unique country in many ways. The Afghan people are incredibly resilient and have been incredible at adapting also to all the different crises. But I think this is very sad for us to see that once again, the Afghan people have to face more crisis, more conflict, and what we wish for the Afghan people is really a peaceful country.
Another issue about women and girls, the world is watching very closely. I know you are not working for UN Women, but when it comes to humanitarian affairs, it also is the human rights of everyone. So how are you looking at the issue from your unique perspective in the office?
So the situation for women and girls will be monitored very closely. It is absolutely essential that women and girls have access to all the essential services. We also want to ensure that in the future our female staff can continue working and can be completely part of society. So these will be very important subjects to monitor and follow in the future.
Could you describe to us how your female workers now from the office and your supporting teams are doing on the streets of Kabul, for example? Your wardrobe, the way you are working and talking to people, do you see anything different from, let's just say, a few months ago?
I think everyone is watching to see how they're going to adapt. It's very early days and probably a bit too early to make statements about how things will be. But I think everyone is cautious and cautiously watching what will be the situation.
We've been hearing, Isabel, over the past few days, different forces in Afghanistan have been making different statements and press conferences from the Taliban, from the Afghan government, from the so-called, from the new, even someone claimed to be the new president of Afghanistan. And how are you in the office digesting this information to help plan your work? Tell me more about that.
I think what needs to be done is really to continue having those negotiation and those conversation about ensuring that the humanitarian actors are able to do their work in the full sense of that. And I think for us, these conversations will be very important in the coming days. And that's how we will see how we will be moving forward.
Isabel Musad Carlson, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your precious time. Really appreciate it. Our special program on Afghanistan today. That's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.